Hello and welcome to Old Lady Plays. I'm Kate, the old lady, and this is how to play Wooden Ships and Iron Men, the basic game. If you're interested in playing the advanced game, see my video on that. The rules that I'm using is the most up-to-date set available, used for tournaments to this day, 1.2b. Now this is an old game, but a good one, portraying the age of sail in a hex and counter game with plotted movement. Avalon Hill were the publishers, and the designer was S. Craig Taylor. Now let's get right to it and introduce the ship counters. Each of these represents a single ship. This is the bow of the ship, the front, and this is the stern of the ship, the back. This side is the port, and this side the starboard. The numbers on the counter refer to various capacities of the ship. These are from bow to stern and starboard to port, the turning ability number, the ship ID, the battle sail speed, and the full sail speed. The color of the background on the ID number tells you what nationality the ship represents. Turning ability tells you how many 60-degree turns, one hex to starboard or port, a ship can make in a movement phase. The ID number tells you several things. The first digit refers to the nationality of the ship. The second digit tells you the class. Class 1 is a full-size ship of the line, 80 guns or more. Class 2 is a ship of the line, usually 74 guns, some slight variation around that number, down to about 60 guns. Class 3 is a frigate, while Class 4 could be a frigate or a corvette. There are also smaller categories of ships. The third and fourth digits make up an individual identifier for that ship. The next thing to look at are the marker counters. There aren't many of them, and they're somewhat self-explanatory. These include wind direction, which shows the direction the wind is blowing, full sails, the ship is at full sails, strike, the ship is surrendering, explosion, the ship is exploding, and sinking, the ship is sinking. Pretty straightforward. The next step is to select a scenario. For your earliest matches, a duel between two ships is probably the easiest way to start. We'll go with this scenario Ranger versus Drake, setting up the ships as indicated. Each ship's bow hex is given, along with the direction in which they're pointing, which will tell you where to place the stern. Mark the wind on the map using the wind direction marker. The next important thing is to prepare a ship's log for each ship in the game. This information can be found either on the counter for each ship or in the order of battle under each scenario. Fill in the name of the ship, its ID number, its crew quality, and its class and guns. On the ship diagram, fill in the spaces with the movement allowance for each attitude to the wind. That is, at the bow of the ship, put the movement allowance for when facing the wind directly. Usually this will be 0, with the wind in position D, relative to the ship. To starboard, you'll see another slot for position C. Place the second number here. To port and further astern, you'll see the A attitude to the wind. This will generally be the fastest movement possible, and then astern you have the B attitude. To fill out the boxes below, check the number of each allotted in the order of battle of the ship specifications chart, and cross off any which exceed that number. So if the hull is 9, cross off all but 9 of the boxes on the hull section. Do this also for crew, work top to bottom, left to right, and for guns and carronades. Be sure to split them evenly, port and starboard. For rigging, leave clear the number under rigging in the ship's spec chart or order of battle, and one line of numbered squares for each movement point allowed. If the ship can go in 4 and has a rigging number of 3, it will look like this. Next and finally in the preparation step, write in the load for the first broadside from each side using a simple code. R for round shot, C for chain shot, G for grape shot, and D for double shot. We'll explain the uses of these later, that's the advanced game, but unless you know what you're doing particularly, just select R for both sides right now. That gives you round shot. Don't write anything in the moves or notes section yet, that comes when the game starts. This is the sequence of play. We start each turn with an unfouling phase when we try and separate ships which have become fouled with one another. The rigging is tangled. Next is a movement notation phase when we plan movement for the turn. Once that's done for all ships, movement can be executed simultaneously. The grappling phase comes next, providing chances to grapple or ungrapple a ship. A ship that is grappled is one that has been caught by a hook from the grappling ship. This is preparatory to boarding actions. The boarding preparation phase involves selecting how many of the crew units will form boarding parties and try to take the other ship by storm, or defend the ship if the enemy is boarding. In the combat phase, all firing is resolved and all damage applied to the ship logs. Next is the melee phase, when any boarding actions are fought out and crew casualties are marked off on the ship's log. And finally, the load broadside step allows for reloading of guns which were fired this turn. Now let's look at the phases in more detail. The unfouling phase is fairly simple. Any fouled ships can roll to unfoul on the unfouling table, and note the DRM available to ships willing to cut free. That is, they destroy a rigging box on that ship to gain a +1 max DRM on a given roll. Before filling in the movement notations, you'll need to determine the movement allowance of your ship this turn. To do this, you need to know the wind direction and its relative attitude to that of the ship. You will have filled out the ship movement allowance chart when you started, showing the battle sail movement allowance at each attitude to the wind, A through D. Now consult that chart using the wind attitude letter to find the movement allowance for your ship this turn. Movement is fairly simple. The ship may move 1 hex forward for each point of movement allowance. The ship may only ever move forward into the hex directly ahead. If you want to change which hex it's pointing at, you need to swing the ship around to face the new heading. To do this, keep the bow in place and rotate the stern of the ship to show the new heading. Remember that a ship may only turn in place as many times per turn as are shown on its turning ability number per turn. Each turn costs 1 movement factor except in one instance. When a ship has a movement allowance of 0, it's at attitude D, it may always make 1 turn for free. To make a plan for movement, write a number for the number of hexes you want to run in one direction, then L or R, or as I use them, P and S for port and starboard, for each turn you want to make. Be specific. The movement plan will be used exactly as written, so don't get it wrong. A ship which fails to fill out its notation, or which enters 0 as its notation, remains still this turn. A ship whose notation is illegal has its movement ended by the illegal move. When it comes to executing movement, all ships are moved simultaneously. Either all the ships will successfully complete their moves, or there will be a collision or illegal move. We covered illegal moves already, so what about collisions? Well, it's like this. No 2 ships can occupy the same hex. If the bow or stern of one ship is remaining in place, while another ship attempts to move into that space, the moving ship is rebuffed, moving back to where it was. The ships must make a fouling roll. Roll 2d6 and add appropriate DRMs, and remember that a natural 12 is an automatic fouling. If the stern of a ship swings into a hex by a turning maneuver, at the same time as another ship moves forward into the hex, the ship moving forward gets the hex and the other ship rebounds. In all other cases that occur, roll 1d6 for each ship involved, and the high roll gets to choose who gets the hex. The other possibility is that ships do not move at all. If a ship fails to move for 2 consecutive turns, on the second turn it will start to drift downwind. Ships of the line drift every other turn, while frigates and smaller will drift every turn. Fouled ships of different classes drift at the higher speed. Dismasted ships will also drift downwind, and may make turns only after a certain number of drifted hexes, based on turning ability. If a ship is fouled, write a letter F in the notes column. When the ship is unfouled, write a circled letter F in that column. If ships end up adjacent, they may attempt to grapple one another. Roll 2d6 and consult the grappling table with appropriate DRMs. Write a G in the notes column for each successful grapple applied to a ship. In order to become ungrappled, a circled G in the notes column. Roll 2d6 on the ungrappling table for each grapple each turn. Grappled ships may fire and conduct boarding actions. In order to fight a boarding action, you must prepare for it. When preparing boarding parties, the lowest numbered crew section available with at least one open square must be used. Lower numbered sections must be used first for boarding parties. After the number of boarding parties have been selected, you must write down what they will be used for, one of three purposes. They can be either offensive boarding parties, OBP, which must melee on the appropriate turn, defensive boarding parties, DBP, which only melee if attacked, and transfer boarding parties, used to either reinforce another ship's crew or to take control of a striking ship. Note that once formed, boarding parties cannot be changed in purpose. Each OBP you select will be part of the entire melee for as long as the ships are fighting, not just this turn. So if you run out of DBPs defending the ship, you can't come up with more by converting or recalling OBP. Make notes of how many boarding parties of each type there are, and where they're to be assigned. If OBP, who are they attacking? If TBP, where are they transferring? When it comes to broadsides, each ship has a port and a starboard broadside, left and right, which may be fired separately and must be reloaded separately. A ship may fire at an enemy ship so long as that ship is the nearest thing within their broadside range. If something else is closer, then that broadside is blocked. Carronades are a special form of gun. They may be used only at very short range, 2 hexes or fewer. When you're firing your broadside, you will consult your ship's log and count the number of undamaged boxes on that side of the ship. That broadside will consist of all the guns on that side, plus carronades if the target is close enough. Cross-reference the number of boxes firing with the range to the nearest part of the ship, and consult the HDT, Hit Determination Table, to get the hit table to use. Modify the number of the hit table as noted below the HDT until you get a number between 0 and 8. If lower than 0, the result is a complete miss. If higher than 8, use the 8 table. If within 5 hexes, the player must now choose to shoot at either hull or rigging. If at 6 hexes or more, the shot must be taken at the rigging. If grappled or fouled, ships may not shoot at one another's rigging. Consult the appropriate table. The combat result will give a set of letters indicating what damage is done. H for hull hits, G for guns, C for crew, and R for rigging. When only one ship can broadside the other, this results in a rake situation. This means the ship is firing at the target through the target's weaker stern or bow section rather than through the thicker sides of the ship. Since the shots will penetrate the wood, they tend to go through the whole ship, causing havoc, thus the raking shots do more damage. These rules apply to all but the initial broadside. The first time you fire a given broadside in a battle, that broadside is considered to have been loaded with extra care and time, precise amounts of gunpowder, and so on. Thus, the HDT explains how to increase the hit table used for an initial broadside, which can only be done once per game per side. Once all this has been determined and a combat result has been reached, use that combat result to mark damage on the ship. Mark off hull boxes, gun boxes, crew boxes, and rigging boxes as needed to resolve the damage done. If a ship runs out of hull boxes, it will surrender. If it runs out of gun boxes, and there are no friendly ships of the same size or larger within 10 axes, the ship will surrender. If rigging boxes are eliminated, the ship is immobile and will surrender to any ship able to rake it. When it comes to the reloading phase, a ship can load 1 complete broadside per turn. Only one side can be loaded, not both. A broadside can be loaded in the same turn that it is fired, and fired again during the following turn or any later turn. Thus, it is possible for the same broadside to be fired every turn. In the basic game, only round shot may be fired. Reloading is indicated in the log by writing the letter of the load under the R or L column of the load section at the appropriate turn number. A broadside may be fired even if there are no targets, but the advantage of initial broadside is lost. Well, this has been how to play the basic game of Wooden Ships and Iron Men. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial video, and I hope you found it useful. I also hope you have a great day, and take care.